Hi, I'm Jessica Gibson for the Huron Historical Society and the Huron Public Library. Today is April 11th, 2009, and I will be interviewing Dick Klein for the Huron Oral History Project. Hi, Mr. Klein. Can you tell me whether you've lived in Huron all of your life?
I've lived in Huron all my life, born and raised here, yes.
Okay. Can you tell me where you lived in Huron?
Well, yes, and this was before everybody went to the hospital to be born. I was delivered on William Street and lived there for 4 or 5 years. And then we moved around different places in Huron.
Okay.
Ended up in Oklahoma. People that are old Huronites will know where Oklahoma is. It's over on the southwestern part of the town, but we've always referred to it as Oklahoma.
And I'm curious about that. Have you heard at all why they call it that?
Oh yeah. The story always was that back when Huron was sparsely populated, Oklahoma you had to go down a hill and up a hill. It was sort of separated from the rest of the town. And supposedly one of the old timers said, "Where do you live?" Well, I live way over there in Oklahoma. It was like this other part of the country, So it's always been called Oklahoma because it's sort of detached.
Okay. Can you tell me where your parents are from? Were they?
My father was born and raised here in town, and my mother was from Berlin Heights. And then after they married, obviously she moved to Huron.
Okay. Can you tell me what they did?
Yeah, my father was a commercial fisherman. Back at that time, fishing was one of the main so-called industries here in Huron, and my mother was just a housewife.
Can you tell me a little bit about fishing, about the fishing industry?
Yeah, well, in town here, there was 2 types of fishing, trap netting and gill netting, and most of Huron was trap netting. And that's what my father, he and his brother owned a boat, and we had probably 4, 5, 6 fish houses in town at that time, and of course they're no longer existing now. But that was one of the big industries in Huron.
Was your father successful?
Well, as fishermen would be at that time, of course the Depression came along, and the fishing industry went down the drink as well as some other industries, and so my uncle ran for the town marshal. At that time, you ran for office, and so he's elected to town marshal. And so my father and brother sold their rig, their boat, nets, and so on, and they split up. My father then moved up to Port Clinton, but I stayed in Huron. I lived with my aunt and uncle, and graduated here in Huron rather than Port Clinton.
Do you have any fond memories of childhood or school? Can you tell me what it was like to go to school here?
Well, of course, the school then was located just about where we are here, the old high school, and it was all one, high school, junior high, elementary. And what the present building here was what we call now the library. Back then, that was grades 1 through 3, as I recall, or 1 through 2. But this was the elementary. And then you had to walk about 50 feet across to the main building, the high school. And there's pictures here, I'm sure of it, the old brick building with the steeple with the clock in it. And I lived right across the street with my aunt and uncle on Center Street, so I didn't have far to go to school.
That's good then. You didn't have to trudge through too much snow, huh?
No. Hop, skip, and a jump, and I was here.
Can you tell me what you did after you graduated?
After I graduated, I went to Ohio State.
Okay.
And this would have been in 1940, 41, and 42, and then the war came in 41, and so I enlisted in the Army in 1942.
Okay.
And so for the next 3 years, I was in the service. And out of the service, I went back to Ohio State and graduated in education and was a a teacher and coach here at Huron for a number of years.
Do you mind if I ask you about your service?
Oh, yeah, fine. Now, I enlisted in the Airborne Parachute Troop.
Okay.
And we were trained in the South, in Georgia, mainly in North Carolina. And we went overseas in 1944, and right at the beginning of the year. In fact, we were at sea during New Year's of 44. And I was there for the invasion on D-Day, jumped in D-Day, and jumped again in Holland, and jumped off the back of a truck when we went up in the Battle of Bulge at Bastogne. They took us up by truck. We didn't go airborne, and that was that. I was wounded in Bastogne and eventually shipped back home, and that was my military career.
It sounds like it was very exciting.
Yeah, I guess you'd call it exciting, yeah.
Yeah. You said that you graduated with a degree in education and taught in Huron.
Yeah.
Did you teach in Huron for the entire time that you taught?
Oh, but 1 year, and 1 year I went to the Defense Department and taught in the Philippines. And I got a leave of absence from our Board of Education and then returned back to Huron. So basically, yes, all my life I taught here in Huron.
Was there a subject that you specialized in?
Social studies, history, government mainly, and then coaching, and then I became athletic director, and then eventually assistant principal, and then eventually, for a couple of years, a principal at the middle school we call junior high. And then I went back to high school, and that's where I ended my career back at the high school as an assistant principal.
Okay. You said you taught in the Philippines?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, as a naval air station. It was with the Defense Department. They called it the DOD,
Okay.
Department of Defense. And it was a small naval station, and in fact, our high school had about 100 students. So you can see it was quite small, but it was interesting. Was able to do a lot of traveling there, and I was able to take the family, my wife and my son and daughter. So it was a good experience, and I enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, that does sound fascinating to be able to do that. Can you tell me what you liked most about teaching?
Oh, obviously the kids, they help keep you young, really. When you're with, basically teenagers for 40 years or so. Why they're interesting, they're challenging, and it was interesting. I don't regret going in education at all.
So you liked it a lot. That's wonderful. Can you tell me where your wife is from?
She's from Columbus, and Washington Courthouse is where, that's in southwestern part of Ohio. And when we were married, that's where she was from.
Okay.
And then she moved to Huron, but we've been here ever since, or she has.
Can I ask you why you stayed in Huron?
Well, the principal or the superintendent at that time was my former teacher and coach. And before I even graduated, back then in 1949, there's scarcity of teachers, so he hired me before I graduated. And so when he made the job offer, I took it. And my roots were here, so I stayed here. Saw no reason to leave.
So do you have a particular aspect of Huron that you enjoy most?
Oh, I think the fact that, when I was in school, we were about 1,400 people. You knew everybody. It was a small community. And of course, I've seen it through the years grow, and where I don't know everybody that, like before. Well, you could go down the street and I could tell you who lived in every house. But we've grown, but it's still a small town comparatively. And I just like the location. And
Okay.
since my friends and relatives were basically all in this area, I saw, again, no reason to leave.
Excellent. So it's home.
Yeah, it was home.
Can you tell me about the people of Huron a little bit more? You mentioned that you used to be able to just know everybody.
Yes, some of the people my age would remember this. The town has changed. Now, when I was growing up, there was the east side and the west side. The east side was on the other side of the river, and there was almost like two separate parts of town. Where are you from? I'm from the east side. Or where are you from? I'm from the west side. And there was a bit of, I don't know what you want, separation between the two. It was sort of a rivalry. But as the town grew, you found West Siders dating and marrying East Siders and vice versa. And I would say probably it wasn't about 1941, 42 that the sort of a stigma between the East Side and the West Side sort of melded and blended, and we became more one. Then, of course, Chaska Beach and Beechwood Cove and every part of the town began to grow, and so it just, we became more homogenized, I guess you would call it.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me about the urban renewal?
About the what now?
The urban renewal project?
I'm big.
The urban renewal project?
Oh, the urban renewal.
I'm sorry.
Well, from my standpoint, it was one of the big mistakes we made in Huron, but that's, I don't know what would have ever happened to our downtown if they hadn't had urban renewal, but I don't think it ever amounted to what they had hoped for when they did it. The boat basin was supposed to be the center of the town, and we were just sort of evolve around it. Well, I think they forgot that that boat basin is only used for 6-7 months out of the year, and the rest of the time we have winter time and fall, and so it again it was progress, I guess, and we've all adapted and accepted the serpentine course that you have to go through town now.
Can you tell me what you would like to see happen in Huron's future?
Oh, I really have no visions.
Okay.
If they asked me to be a town planner, I'd give it up and say, look to somebody else. No, I have no thoughts about that.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Any stories, say from the war or from your childhood, that you feel comfortable?
Not unless somebody would have a specific question to ask, just to reminisce. Why I'd go rambling on, and I don't know what it would accomplish. But if you have a specific question, I'd try to answer it.
Unfortunately, I don't. But any rambling is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. How about your favorite? Is there something that you were most? I know it was a war and it was a difficult time, but was there something that you most enjoyed during that time? Was there some little joy that you had?
Oh yeah, I think growing up in a small town, you're more close knit. My high school class was the largest class at that time. I think it was 33, 34, something like that. But you knew everybody, and you were all friends, and that's something that you always remember, the closeness. Okay. And you stayed friends through the years, and it's a pretty close-knit community. I don't think it's the same now for kids that are graduating. And of course, we went up at one time in our high school. We were up over 200 some in a class. Well, that's quite a change from 25 to 40 in a class that we'd had for many, many, many years. And I don't think it's quite as close-knit as probably as we were back then. And being able to go down the street and people sitting out on the porch, you knew everyone, and that, that's different now.
Okay, if you don't have anything further to add.
No, I'll
no
go back
further?
and watch the Masters.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Klein.